Hey guys, it's Deeds with Creative Retreat Kits. Welcome back to our YouTube channel and happy May Faith Art Box to you. I love this Faith Art Box. It's so full of color, all the floral tones, all the earth tones, and this Jesus stamp. Oh, this Jesus stamp alone just speaks life into my soul. I'm so excited to utilize it. I've pulled April's stamp set out to see if there's some compatibility between the florals of last month and the florals of this month. That remains to be seen, but it's also a reminder that you guys, if you have some old kits on hand, just pull those out every once in a while and see if you can't find some WordFetti or some alphas that you weren't able to use before that you can use now. The devotion for this month is written by Brittany Carlton. She's one of our design team members, and she has a devotion/testimony with some reflection questions and then some scriptural prompts. And the one that I want to use today is Philippians chapter 1, verse 6, which says, "And I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ." I'm really enjoying how Distress Ink and Distress Ink Oxides look in the pages of my Bible, so I've utilized them a lot lately. I'm definitely not a pro though, so if you guys need tutorials on how to utilize these to their full potential, just go ahead and Google some, because I know some amazing things that can be done with Distress Inks and Distress Ink Oxides. I'm just going to be laying down a very simple and soft background with some stencils as well. I'll get some florally elegance going, and so that will deliver what I'm looking for right now and the level that I'm at with Distress Inks. The Philippians is an interesting book. It's actually a letter written by Paul that stands out above all the other letters that he wrote to any of the churches. One of the biggest contrasts is that it's written with joy and happiness throughout. He writes to Philippians with overwhelming joy that they are maturing, that the church is growing, and everything seems to be going very, very well. Whereas the other letters, primarily they start the same way with grace and peace to you, but then they dissolve into an exhortation of sorts where he's heard about something and he wants to quickly jump on it and correct that with them. I recently revisited a Philippians study by Matt Chandler, and there's an entire series on Right Now Media, and it's also on YouTube, so I'll find those links so that you guys can visit these yourselves. It's very fascinating. The original start of Philippians comes from Acts 16, and so Matt Chandler goes all the way back to Acts 16 to kind of dive into the history and background of the church of Philippi. And Paul, in Acts 16, runs across three main characters that we know of that start the church of Philippi. One of them is Lydia, the seller of purple, and she's smart and she's high class, white collar, very rich, very well to do for herself, and she's saved in a ladies' gathering where Paul speaks. And so her history is that she comes from this really nice background of prominence, of influence, of rich, and is saved, and then uses her resources to further the kingdom that way. And then you come across this slave girl who's demon possessed, and she has a master who is using her and exploiting her for money because apparently she has the gift of divination. And she's saved through exorcism. Paul turns to her and basically commands the demon to come out of her right now, and she's saved that way. Her eyes are open, she follows Paul, and of course Paul gets in trouble because she was a source of money for some people. And then there's the jailer, and the Philippian jailer puts Paul and his buddies in jail. He's the steward over them pretty much. And what is really cool is that not only does he become saved through a miracle that he witnesses, he's also baptized, and he invites Paul into his home, and his whole household is converted. So you have these three very different, very iconic people. I mean, they represent a large portion of our culture today. We have the white collar, we have the blue collar, we have the impoverished, and these all have significance in the beginning stages at the church of Philippi and this really great letter that's written to Philippians. So that's pretty cool, right? You have all of these different backgrounds, you have all these different people, they were brought up differently, they have different religious views, they're probably different in their intellect, in their race, in the culture that they were brought up in, and yet God pursues each of them individually on their level. It doesn't matter what your financial status is, it doesn't matter what your job is, it doesn't matter where your training was or your education is, it doesn't even matter where it is that you came from or what you've you've done in your past. God calls people of all different types, and he uses people of all different types. And so for Paul to write Philippians 1:6, that is a wonderful encouragement. That is a strong encouragement, and it should encourage us in our walks and in the different ministries that God has called us to, or the growth that God has called us to. Maybe we're still relatively immature in the faith. This is saying, continue on, because it's not over. We're not done. God's not finished with you yet. And so it's calling us to have a holy faith in Jesus Christ to continue to do his work as he has promised inside of us. And this makes me feel pretty good about where God has me. He's begun something inside of me. He knows what my calling is and what he's planning on and purposing me to do. So that's good for me to know. This is good for me to study. Looking back on the history is all sorts of fun and exciting, and it connects things for us in the Bible. So I would encourage you guys, if you have a calling in Jesus Christ, if you know the Lord, don't forget that he has a plan for you. Have a holy faith in Jesus, trusting him to do what it is that he's called you to do. Don't give up. Don't let somebody else's ministry or somebody else's calling come into your mind and overshadow that which God has called you to do. Everybody has a different purpose. Everybody is a different member in the body. We can't have a bunch of eyeballs. We can't have a bunch of feet. We can't have a bunch of hands. We can't have a bunch of heads or ears. We need every single portion of the body to fully be functional. So my Bible journaling today is, I want a holy faith in Jesus Christ to continue to believe that he's working my faith out, that he's doing what he wants to be doing in me. It's nobody else's calling that he's called me to do. It's my own. It's personal. It's individualized. And that's great. Those leafy greens that I stamped down turned out pretty good, if I do say so myself. I am not great with floral arrangements or wreaths or anything like that. So when it works out like that, I'm thrilled. I feel like this leafy green stamp was very forgiving for me today. I want to go ahead and share with you what I wrote down in this journaling portion. It was, God, give me holy faith in Jesus, which is what I've been talking about today, just wanting that faith to continue on in my purpose. And on the bottom, I'm writing, the Lord is intentional. He gives us deep and purposeful lessons that we may bloom and grow. Blooming for Jesus, regardless of the situation, there's meaning. Holy faith in Jesus means that we trust and understand that God is always working. And so you'll see me journal that there at the bottom. I'm going to add a little pretty bow because I just love bows. I don't know why. It fancies it up, it girlies it up, and that's okay with me. But you guys, in all actuality, you have a purpose and a calling. And your job is just to get to know Jesus so that you can get to know what it is that he would have you do. It truly does sadden me when friends of mine who have picked up and ran with this calling of God become disheartened or disillusioned because at first they don't see fruit. But God doesn't work like that. He's not necessarily going to produce something right off the bat. We need to sow, we need to water, and maybe we need to water and water and water and water before we actually see the graces of the fruit that he's going to provide through our ministry. So please don't give up, don't give in, because the enemy would have us believe that if we don't see fruit right away, then we are a failure, or that God has called us to something else. Maybe it's just that we need to wait. And waiting is a hard thing, but it's well worth it. And having that holy faith in Jesus will help us. I'm hoping that you guys were encouraged by this. This is a very big lesson, and I'm really looking forward to continuing my study in Philippians. Happy May to you guys again, and God bless and much love.